on a glorious sunny day, on a sunny afternoon, I'm delighted to say, and I'm slightly jealous that she's sitting outside in her beautiful garden, but I'm delighted to say that Danielle Daley has joined me for a chat today. How are you, Danielle?
Yes, I'm brilliant. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for having me on.
Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. Let's start with the most important thing. How are you? How's the family?
Everyone's fine at the moment. I mean, with the sunshine, it's a lot better. We were struggling with a few rainy days, but otherwise everyone's healthy and well, which is the main thing. And I think everyone's better for having me around the house more. So
everyone's better for having you around the house more. You know, elaborate on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite the lively one in the house. So always like messing around. Everyone's like, oh, you're messing around too much. So I think it's quite nice for them to have me around, bringing that joyful atmosphere. So
oh, wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure that, as you said, they're delighted to have you, and it's a lovely sunny day as well, which is even better.
it is.
So
Exactly.
tennis, let's talk about that. Something that's very close to your heart. When did you realize that tennis was going to be the career for you?
I think that it's definitely become more real the older I've gotten. When I was younger, I started by playing around about 8 years old. And it was my mum who introduced me to tennis. My gran and grandma bought me my first plastic tennis rackets. My mum and I used to hit balloons around the front rim. So it sort of started there. And then as time went on, I played more throughout my school days. And I realized more and more that actually I love tennis and want to keep playing and competing to a high level, the highest level that I can.
It's funny you mentioned about the balloons kind of thing that your grandparents were helpful on, because that's one thing that Judy Murray talks about very much to coaches, about when you're getting children to play, the first thing to do is to get them to hit a balloon with a racket. So your grandparents were clearly on the right path.
They were. They've always loved tennis, and I think that knowing that I'm pursuing to be a tennis player really makes them really happy as well.
So what age were you when you first picked up that racket?
I think I was about 8 years old.
So fairly, you know, because sometimes when you talk to tennis players, they say I started when I was 3 or when I was 4, and you started when you were about 8, and yet you are where you are now. So I guess, how did you manage practicing tennis and getting your head around tennis when you were at school?
Well, I mean, it's always been quite tough juggling tennis with education. Definitely when I got to more of my GCSEs and A levels, it was a lot tougher. But it was always very much finish school, then I'm training, or even there'd be days where my school allowed me to take time off so that I could then train in the mornings and then go in the afternoon for studying. So it wasn't easy, but it was always manageable, and I never really struggled with balancing the two. I'd say the only tough part was when I'd play tournaments and then miss classes. That was when it started to become a bit more of a problem, because no one was actually there to catch me up. So for my A levels, I actually homeschooled myself, because that way it would make it a lot easier for me to compete and then just pick back up from where I started. So.
And during those school years, did you think, in your mind, had you decided, let's say 13, 14, I'm going to be a tennis player, or were you still thinking maybe I can do this as a casual thing and just see where it takes me?
No, it was definitely always, I'm going to be a tennis player. At school, when people ask, tennis player. So it's always been the main focus for me, definitely.
I bet when you got to, because I'm going to have to get this right, when you get to like year 10, because it would have been year 10, when you have those careers chats at school and the careers advisor says to you, so what do you want to do? What do you want to be? You'd been straight away going, I'm going to be a tennis player. And that conversation was done.
Yes, that was it. 2 minutes done. No need to write anything, tennis player, and that was it.
That's brilliant. I love that. So you've left school, and now you're playing professionally. How much was that a transition for you, going from, you know, managing your school career to actually, now that you're free, in inverted commas, to pursue this professionally?
I think that it was definitely a lot easier. I mean, tennis training, your days can be quite long. So it was quite nice to be able to go out and put all of my effort into training without having to worry about coming home and studying, because studying can take it out of you just as much as tennis can. So I found it a lot easier, but my days also felt like I had a lot more space in them. And I started just trying to find a way to still be productive instead of just like lounging around if I've got like an extra 3 hours. So it's very much just trying to balance, making sure that you don't waste that extra time and make sure that it's still useful towards you. So.
And tell us, like, what's a typical day for you in terms of your training?
Well, I mean, I train at Halton in Aylesbury. So usually I do some squads there during the week. So I might get up and my day might start around 6, 7. And then I'll go to training, I'll have fitness, I'll do some own stuff for myself, some footwork, and I'll come home, stretch, watch some tennis. It's all very related around tennis. And then maybe I'll like watch some TV in the afternoon, like with my family. So.
And speaking of your family, we talked about your grandparents, but you said that your mum is also into tennis. I mean, who did she like, or who does she like to watch?
Well, she loves watching, of course, Venus, Serena. She loves Federer, Nadal, Ashleigh Barty. I mean, my mum could watch tennis all day. Same could my grandparents. It's just a very tennis-orientated household.
I'd love to know where their own love of tennis comes from. Do you know where it came from for them?
Well, I know that my grandparents, because they're the Windrush generation, when they came over in like the 50s, they were very much into tennis. Like it was never really accessible for them to play, but they were always very much wanting to watch it. And then I think my mum then, when she was at school, she then picked up rackets and was playing to sort of an okay level. And then that's then helped them put it into me to then make me like go forward and continue in my career. So it's always been around, even in my extended family, everyone loves tennis. Like everyone seems to have been to Wimbledon in my household. Like, so I was like, oh yeah, I saw, so we were watching the tennis the other day and it was Serena and Dementieva in the semi-finals. Because we were watching the Wimbledon coverage and my gran was like, oh yeah, we were at that semi-finals match and we spoke to Richard Williams. I was like, oh wow, that's good to know.
For me, I grew up, we also had Wimbledon in our house every, those 2 weeks in July, as it was there in June, July. I'd come in after school, Wimbledon been on all day on the TV channels. My mum wasn't into it as much. My dad would watch it, but it was my sister and I and my uncle who really
watched it a lot.
Yeah, watched it a lot, and that's how I kind of fell in love with it. And now I work in it, which is great. I just love the idea of your whole family just sitting around the TV watching.
Everyone loves it. Even in lockdown, like I was playing, I got Topspin 4. I was playing on the game on the PlayStation, and like everyone was like gathering around, like it was like Wimbledon final to like watch me. So it's always had that atmosphere, even when it's virtual tennis.
So can I ask you, before the season was suspended back in February, March time, what were the things that you were working on from a professional perspective, but also from a personal perspective as well?
Well, I mean, my season's actually been suspended for a bit longer because before the COVID lockdown, I'd just come back from a year out from being injured. So I was out last year with a shoulder injury that required shoulder surgery for me to be able to get back on the court. So I only started training and competing at the end of last year. And funny actually, I'd gone to Cancun for some 15Ks in mid-March. And I arrived on the Wednesday, and by Thursday they cancelled the tournament. And then by Saturday I had to come back home. So I mean, I can look back and laugh at it like now, but before I was quite gutted because I was finally getting back up and moving, and I was doing a lot of work on my serve just to adjust my technique because we think that could be the reason why I got injured in the first place. So that was more the main focus for me, which was my serve.
And in terms of your shoulder injury, now have you recovered? You've obviously recovered. During that period of time, did you question yourself and your thoughts about, is this an injury that I can recover from?
I did. I think I did think about that a lot. It was a tough time because even the surgeon couldn't understand how I got injured in the first place because I had a scan and all around my arm was fine apart from my labrum. Like I had the smallest tear, and yet it was enough to take me out. I mean, I was even trying to learn to serve left-handed just so I could just forget about it and keep playing. But I had to have the surgery, and during the time it was tough because it's stopping me from playing, competing, and then you watch the tennis and you see everyone's still out there, but I'm basically stuck. It was tough, but I think that I know that I've gotten to a good level before, so I know that I can do it again and keep progressing. So I just try to stay positive about it.
Because we've talked so much in the tennis world recently about the the physical side of the game, that we're now starting to explore the mental side of the game. And when you physically, your body is telling you, look, I can't do this right now, I need a bit of time to recover. And then your mind is going, your mind is thinking all the time of, I need to play tennis, I need to get back out there. How do you manage that conflict?
I think that, I mean, they've always said that mental is a big part of tennis, and I think that it is tough to try and balance the two. But for me, I was just trying to bear in mind, if I'd continued playing on my shoulder, it could have gotten a lot worse. So I just try and see that actually, if I stop now, it will help me in the long run than making it worse now and then me potentially not being able to play again, which is worse than taking a year out and then having the rest of my career to look forward to. So just try of looking at, well, where am I going to gain even though I'm losing a small bit? That's the way that I try and look at it.
And I guess also that you talked about disappointment, being out in Cancun, you get out there, then you get told that, the tournament's cancelled. How are you feeling at that time? Was there, you talk about disappointment, but also the worry about actually getting back into the UK given the situation that was going on?
Exactly. Like, I was speaking with my mum and I was saying to her, well, look, I've got brilliant weather out here. Why don't I just stay out here and train out here? But then it was like, well, if they shut the borders, how are you going to get back into the country? You might not see you for months. So it was very much just try and get back home as safe as possible and then figure out things when I did get back home. So it wasn't the best thing to happen, but at least I'm back home safe and sound. So
Absolutely. And you're back home. The season is suspended. How did you manage to keep up with your training and fitness?
Well, actually, I've got a TRX in my back garden. So my granddad hooked up like a little hook so that I can do my exercises. So I've still kept to a schedule. I did some footwork drills. Him and I were volleying in the garden as well. And we've also got a cross trainer, so I got some cardio and was going out for runs. So I think I actually did more fitness during the lockdown than I would in an average week. But it's all trying to help me so that I could continue when I did get back.
And let's fast forward a bit further forward. So now lockdown is starting to ease. People can now start going back out using tennis courts because it's one of the most socially distanced sports that you can be apart from each other. And then you get an email or a phone call to say, we've got a couple of tournaments coming up. Tell us about that. It's brilliant that the tournaments are back on. I think it's brilliant for match practice as well, because right now, during lockdown, you can train as much as you want. It's match practice that you need. And I think it's brilliant that they've put the tournaments back on. It's very short after lockdown. And also, because they've got the British tours, they've got St. George's Hill, there was the Progress Tour. So it's a lot. And also the changing of the structure of tournaments, because it's round robins now. Well, not the British tours, but St. George's Hill and the Progress Tour. So it was a lot of matches all in one. But I played St. George's Hill the first week and also the Progress Tour the second week. And it was definitely good because now I can see what things I need to work on in training. So. Tell us about the Progress Tour, which finished last week. Katie Bolter was successful in that. That was at the NTC. Was it a bit strange being there? Because obviously there's no crowds, and rightly so, and people are social distancing. What was it like down there? What was the atmosphere?
It was very different. They were a lot more strict, making sure that you followed the one-way system around the NTC. There was a marshal who was making sure that you were staying 2 meters from people. So it was all very different. You couldn't sit together and eat lunch. It's always one person here and then one person halfway across the cafeteria. So it's very different. It's the best thing to do to try and keep everyone safe. But the tournament itself, it didn't go as well for me because I actually had to retire because I've got a bit of a groin injury at the moment. For the last few weeks, I was struggling with my lower back and my groin. But I've seen my physio and I've got exercises to be able to get back onto court slowly. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I should be back, hopefully competing in the next couple of tournaments that are coming up. But otherwise, I think the tournament atmosphere was good, and it was good to see the top players like Katie taking part as well. So no, it was really good.
I think for me, just seeing a spotlight on yourselves, the opportunity for people to see you and other players as well, who might not necessarily get the spotlight like others. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And the fact that they were streaming them as well, so you could see all the matches and choose which matches that you wanted. For you, this time last year, everything was fine. The sun was shining, the grass season was coming to an end, you're playing, and now obviously the tragedy of COVID has changed a lot of
I know,
things.
yeah.
How important is it, do you think, that we have the public have the opportunity to see tournaments like these on social media?
I think it's very important to show that it's not just players competing at the top level that are there. There are also other players who are still actually trying to make it up to the top level. I think it's good to sort of spread out and see everyone competing, because I mean, the top players at the top are brilliant, but you've also got the ones who are maybe not at the top of as yet, who are actually coming through. And I think it's brilliant for the public to be able to see that and recognize that there's other levels to tennis as well.
I like that, to see that there are other levels of tennis, and I think that's a really, really good point, because you're right. It is obviously, it's fantastic to see, you know, the top players, but there are other tennis players, and I think that's been the big lesson, if I can call it that, over the last few months because of COVID, and talking about how players were going to cope during that time. Those at the top level, the lower rankings. How healthy has it been to have those debates about lower ranked players and their profiles and their financial situations as well?
I think that it's been really good, because really, if you're not inside the top 100, it's quite tough for tennis to provide a sustainable living for you. Because I mean, you've got the costs of traveling, your coaching, you've got physio, there's a lot of outgoing expenses, and the prize money at the lower levels could be better. I mean, it's brilliant that there is prize money, but sometimes it's not enough to actually even cover a week's accommodation. So I think it's good to be able to see that players of a lower level actually still do need help, not just because we're tennis players, we've got all the help we need. There is actually more that maybe could be done to try and help fund the lower level tennis players. I think it's good to raise awareness to it, just so that people know that we're there.
Let's raise awareness about you, because you're not just a tennis player, you're a human being as well. Who is Danielle off the court?
Well, I'm quite a family-orientated person. I love spending time with my family and also my friends. I've got tennis friends, school friends, but it's been quite tough to spend time with them during the lockdown, because everyone's just trying to make sure that they're following the right protocols, staying safe. But I managed to meet up with my friends for a couple of picnics during the lockdown, which was quite nice. And also, I do love baking as well. Throughout the lockdown, I was baking everything in the house. Shortbread, croissants.
That's the reason why flour was sold out around the country, because you were baking within an inch of your life.
Cleaning up. Yes, I was cleaning up all the flour off the shelves.
I love a cake. So what's your speciality when it comes to cakes?
I've been doing a lot of Oreo cakes, Victoria sponge, lemon drizzle, the works. It's like a bakery here.
I love it. I love a good Victoria sponge. It's got to be said, and lemon drizzle as well. I'm going to put in an order for a lemon drizzle and a Victoria sponge. That'd be. Thank you, fantastic. So, in terms of your personality, you say you're quite sunny, you're quite bubbly. Would you describe yourself as an extrovert?
I would think so. I mean, even when I was younger, I was making conversation with everyone. Like even like in the pram, I was like waving and things like that. So I've always been someone who talks to a lot of people. And even when I go away to tennis tournaments, I always come back and tell my mum, oh, I've made new friends here and new friends there. So I like to think that I talk a lot and speak to a lot of people. So I think I'm extroverted.
How important is it for you to have that balance between having the playing career, but also having the family, who you sound like you're incredibly close to each other, and having your close set of friends as well?
I think it's really important. Well, I know for me, because sometimes you can have a tough match or a tough training day, and if you're close to people, then you can talk about it and then they can try and uplift you and support you. And I do think that my family have definitely helped me a lot, especially through my injury, and my friends. Everyone was there to prop me up, keep me motivated, make sure that I wasn't too down. And I actually got to spend a lot more time with them as well, which I was grateful for. So I think that my family and my friends definitely help me a lot, support me a lot.
And in terms of going back to your tennis, looking at the tour at the moment on the women's side of things, which players are you enjoying watching? Who do you admire? Who inspires you? Excluding the Williams sisters, because I think that would be your top answer anyway. Outside of those two fantastic players, on the women's side, who do you like to watch? Who inspires you?
I love watching Ashleigh Barty and Simona Halep. purely because I'm not particularly tall, and neither of them. So it kind of just gives me a bit of inspiration to know that even the tallest players aren't at the top. And also their game styles. I love the way Ashleigh Barty plays. A lot of, she's a very all-court player. Got the slice, the volleys, the aggression. So no, it's inspirational for me to watch them.
I love your answer about that, actually, because yeah, you're right. If you think about it, if you're not, you know, Karolina Pliskova, who's very, very tall, compared to
exactly.
Ashleigh Barty, who's 5 foot something, and then you're right with Simona Halep as well. They use that to their advantage, don't they?
Advantage, definitely. You can see that they've shaped their game to make sure that they don't get pushed back too much. They're always imposing themselves, and I really do like that.
And in terms of you and your tennis ambitions, and I've got to throw in, I guess, the family ambitions for you, what would be the ultimate for you?
Well, my main ambition is definitely to get onto that WTA tour and not just stop when I get my first point. Hopefully get inside the top 100, keep pushing even further than that. But I think right now my main priority is just to stay injury free, just to try and get as much injury prevention done to make sure that I don't end up with another year out like I did last year. And hopefully if that happens, then I can keep pushing and get to my main ambition.
And I guess the rest of the family would love you to win a Grand Slam or a WTA title.
Oh, they'd love that. Right. They'd love that.
And why not? And why not? And for you, I know you said that, you know, we talked about the career service at the beginning of our chat, but finally, I've got to ask you, if you weren't a tennis player, what do you think you would have wanted to do with your life?
I think that's a really tough question. I feel like whenever someone asks me that, it sounds like a really cliche answer, but I've never thought of doing anything else.
And that's absolutely fine. Why would you? If tennis is everything to you, that's it. There's nothing else. Exactly.
For me, tennis is my life. So I couldn't, during my year out, I literally felt like I was lost, like nothing to do. It felt so weird. My days were incomplete. So no, I couldn't imagine doing anything else but tennis.
Oh, Danielle, I wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Good luck with the shoulder as well. I'm sure you're taking good care of it, all that TRX equipment in your back garden. Yeah. I'd love to see that. And yeah, if you can send me that Victoria sponge and lemon drizzle cake, I'd really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie.
You're most welcome. All the best for the rest of the season. I look forward to seeing you out on court soon.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for having me as well.